Hey ladies and gents, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 to what if Naruto could use antimatter. So if at any point in this what if you realize I'm talking kind of quietly, like I'll obviously edit it so it's louder so you guys can actually hear it, but I'm talking quietly because there's a lot of people in the house currently and I don't feel like disturbing them. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit quieter, and yeah, that's about all I have to say to that. So yeah, like I said, be talking a little bit quieter, and there's going to be no like goal on this video, just because I don't really feel like it. I'll leave a link to my Discord in the description below, where you can just give me different what if ideas and everything like that, along with just like and subscribe, be nice. So with that being said, let's do a brief recap of what happened in the last part before getting into the new material of the what if. So in the last part, Naruto obviously got antimatter. His body has this weird basically design to it to allow him to actually have a storage of this antimatter without exploding himself and everybody around him, along with having some sort of release mechanism to be able to, release the antimatter and be able to use it like that. So Naruto would end up actually accidentally killing a bunch of people in the village because antimatter is really powerful. Like if Naruto wasn't able to control it, he would obviously kill people with it. So he was exiled from the village, at least to the point where he would actually be able to control the antimatter that he actually had. In which case, a few years later, at this point, around the time Naruto would normally graduate from the academy, he would get sent back, or would go back to the village with the news that he has actually been able to control the antimatter that he has. And then he went to do the graduation exam one more time and easily passed. So with that, let's get back into the what if. So, with Naruto graduating from the academy, what team is he actually going to be placed on? Well, I'm actually going to switch it up in this what if. I don't really need to tell you guys a reason. You'll figure out the exact reason of why I'm changing up the team the second I say who the two team members are. So, Naruto is placed on a team. Or, we'll say he's still placed on Team 7 with Kakashi. However, something else is actually going to happen. His team members are going to change. The two people are actually going to be Ino and Hinata. Yeah, Ino Chikasho is not going to be a thing anymore, but I don't think anybody really cares too much. They have to figure out a way to balance out the massive, strength of Naruto and the intellect of somebody like Ino or Hinata, basically. Because Naruto's, absurdly strong, but in the written part of the exam, he didn't do the best, but simply because he never really trained his mind in that way. However, those two did, and Naruto would be massively stronger than both of them, so they're trying to balance that out. At least that's my explanation for wanting Naruto to have some sort of a harem later on, but we're not going to talk about that yet. Just, not just yet. So, they're placed with Team 7 on Team Kakashi. They'd obviously, they go up to the roof and they do their introductions with nobody really knowing Naruto that well. Kind of completely forgot about Naruto, but this is Hinata's first time seeing him in 5 years or so. So she's looking at Naruto now. She's like, "You look a lot different." He's not necessarily, he's a little bit bulkier. He's been training his physical body a lot more than he would in the original. He's pretty lean still, but Naruto's got some muscle, and Hinata notices this, and she's like, "Oh, interesting." Ino would be noticing this as well, but that's all she's thinking about. She basically doesn't remember Naruto. She's like, "Naruto, the name's kind of familiar, but I don't really remember you. It doesn't matter. We're placed on the same team now." So she doesn't really care, but she does think Naruto's pretty nice hunk. She's not gonna lie about that. She thinks Naruto's pretty attractive. She isn't gonna try to say otherwise. She's like, "Oh, better than Sasuke." She's trying to debate that. She's like, his hair, his facial features are better, but Naruto's got that bod, though. That's basically what she's thinking at this point. With Hinata thinking something along the lines of, "I wonder if his personality has changed too much." And obviously, it's changed. It's changed quite a bit, but it's not going to be to the extent where Naruto doesn't want to prove himself and he doesn't want to be the Hokage. That'll be strengthened even more than it was so in the original, just because the fact that Naruto has to prove himself even more now. He's literally killed people, and he needs to be redeemed for that. He just doesn't know how just yet. So anyway, everybody would do their introductions with everybody going, nobody really does anything too different from what they would in the original, except for the fact that, the other two aren't really on their team. Hinata's just she's kind of confused with the fact that Naruto is returning, and she's pretty indifferent about it because she doesn't really remember Naruto all too much. So hers would be the same as what she would do in the original, with Hinata being even more shy, I guess you could say. She doesn't really talk. She's like, and Kakashi eventually, after her saying about 300 times, would be like, "Okay, next, Naruto, what do you want to do?" And Naruto looks Kakashi. His eyes kind of get a little bit more determined, and he says that he's going to prove himself to everybody. He's going to try to redeem himself for his past actions, and by doing so, he's eventually going to become the Hokage, where he can fix all of his old mistakes and be redeemed for what he did in the past. With Kakashi knowing exactly what Naruto's talking about, because he's obviously heard that Naruto accidentally killed people, even if it wasn't necessarily him trying to do so. He technically still did it, and it was still his fault. So he's like, okay, we'll see if your actions will outweigh your words, basically, in a way. Anyway, he tells them not to eat in the next morning before meeting them, in the morning. He meets them in the morning and kind of explains what the bell test is, with everybody being kind of mad that they didn't eat, because obviously they're like, well, we thought we were gonna throw up. Like, damn, bitch. They're kind of sad by this, but obviously they would begin the bell test with everybody hiding, excluding Naruto. Naruto's still very strong-headed and thinks he can do anything that he really wants to do. Naruto's physical body would obviously be much more powered up than it would be in the original, but this is not due to the antimatters, due to the amount of physical training that he has been doing in order to try to use the antimatter. So we'll say he's at around Neji or Lee in terms of, physical ability of like taijutsu and stuff like that, but he has a little bit more strength than that. Not something like Sakura where she could like punch massive holes and things, but he's a lot stronger than he actually was. So like we'll say he's around like Might Guy's level of like punching strength, just because like Might Guy's not really that strong, all things considered. He's just really fucking fast. With Naruto being in a similar way, except he's just as strong, but a little bit slower, just a little bit, just like a touch. And no, well, he's pretty slow comparatively. Like imagine if Might Guy opened up like the 8th gate, he would absolutely fuck Naruto. But we're not talking about that. That's not a scenario. Well, actually, Naruto could just explode him, but we're not talking about that now, are we? Anyway, the bell test would actually start with Naruto. He's running towards Kakashi at this moment. Kakashi being slightly impressed by the speed that he's going at, because Naruto's going at weightless level like Lee. Like, he's pretty fucking fast. Like, Kakashi's actually having a pretty difficult time actually reacting to him. He'd obviously put away all of his books and stuff like that, but he debates whether or not he should actually take out his Sharingan in order to have an easier time reacting to Naruto's speed. He doesn't actually do that yet, and he starts trying to fight hand-to-hand with Naruto, and notices that Naruto's actually, he's a really skilled taijutsu user for being completely by himself for so long. And then he realizes why. As he's, doing this, Naruto makes a few shadow clones. This is obviously how Naruto was training. He was training with himself. And he notices this, and is like, oh, this is where Kakashi would actually get the idea of, using shadow clones to train. He's like, that's why Naruto got so good with chakra control so quickly. He was using his shadow clones in order to... He realizes this. He realizes it a lot earlier than he would in the original, and realizes that that's exactly why Naruto got so powerful so quickly. So Naruto would obviously, he'd use shadow clones now, and Kakashi would be forced to take out his Sharingan. Now that, Naruto was still at the same speed, but he has 30 of him in the battlefield now. Kakashi is having a really difficult time actually fighting all of these different Narutos, even though this Naruto is literally 12 years old, but he's trying to figure out how he's going to actually defeat Naruto. Naruto hasn't even used the power that he used to kill everybody else. Kakashi debates why he wouldn't be using this, and eventually comes to a conclusion. He's too afraid to use it. He doesn't want to hurt any more people. But then he realizes it. Maybe Naruto isn't afraid to use it, he's just waiting for a perfect opportunity to, because why would Naruto be afraid to use something if he's, completely mastered it, if he has the ability to control it to a point where it wouldn't kill anybody? Why would Naruto not be using it? He's thinking about this, but then he gets caught off guard, because he wasn't completely focused on the fight while he was thinking about this, this scenario in his mind. And he gets punched across the face, getting sent flying backwards. This is actually one of the first actual blows that Naruto actually dealt to him, and he actually feels it, and he's like, whoa. He's stronger than he is fast. He punches about as hard as Might Guy. That's absolutely insane. How is he able to punch so hard? So Kakashi, now a little bit more focused, stops debating this in his mind, stops debating why Naruto isn't using his power, and just is trying to figure out a way that he can easily defeat Naruto without having to worry too much about, Naruto's physical might and everything like that. At this point, Naruto hasn't really used anything other than shadow clones and taijutsu. And he's still thinking, in the back of his mind, he's like, why isn't he doing this? But then he looks down. and he sees a little, like, thing pop out of the ground right beneath him. It's actually an arm. Naruto just grabbed him. And he looks at Naruto's hand now as this weird white aura starts, like, erupting around this weird black ball. Kakashi realizes it. This must be the antimatter. As he tries jumping out of the way, he feels a massive amount of pain down, in his lower leg, and he looks down to see that his leg is pretty injured at this point. Like, he can't use his left leg anymore, and he's like, what? What was that? And then then he realizes, obviously, like, it's like, yeah, that must be the antimatter that Naruto used to kill everybody. And he's obviously pretty worried by this because that was a very, very powerful attack. And he's like, what? And then he sees that the Shadow Clone that used it, the ball is still in its hand. And then with his Sharingan, he actually sees it. Just that tiny, smallest little hole inside of the chakra. And he realizes it. Just that tiny bit, that tiny hole allowed just the smallest amount of the antimatter to actually escape, making it so that Naruto basically used, like, just the smallest percentage of it, and it did that much damage? What if he actually just unleashed the orb? What would happen then? Would it destroy the world? He doesn't actually know yet. He obviously he'd be pretty worried by this, but he can't use his leg at this point. And the other two would come out, so Hinata would actually come out first, realizing this was a perfect opportunity. She jumps down, and does she know Air Palm yet? I don't know, whatever. She uses an Air Palm, because I'm going to say she knows it, taking Kakashi off balance. It doesn't do any actual damage to him, but it does do enough to take her, off, like, take him off of his balance point. So as Kakashi is falling downwards, he looks forward at the last moment and realizes that Naruto is mere inches away from him with his fist, inches away from his stomach, and he's obviously worried by this, but he can't actually do anything to react against it as he gets sent flying up into the air, where Ino happens to be, and Ino would jump up and she'd slam Kakashi back down towards the ground, actually dealing a pretty decent amount of damage comparatively to what Hinata actually did. Obviously, it wouldn't be anywhere near what Naruto did when he uppercutted frickin' Kakashi, but it would do a little bit. And Kakashi would get sent flying back towards the ground, where he'd land face first and be laying there. He'd be about to get up and try to counteract what they were all doing to him, but Naruto would put him in a position where he couldn't actually move, holding his arms behind his back and holding him down. He would then signal to Ino and Hinata to actually take the bells, and they would actually end up doing so. Naruto allows them to take both the bells because he thinks this could be his first act of being redeemed. He can just take another test later on in the future and he would actually not graduate. But Kakashi sees this and he's just like, your actions do outweigh your words. But then he obviously would pass them because that was a pretty fucking great show of teamwork, and he allows them to pass the bell test. With them starting their D-rank missions, they would obviously get very, very bored of these, and eventually they would go to Hiruzen asking for a higher ranking mission, who, after even more, like, prodding than he would in the original, not really wanting to send Naruto on a mission until he was truly aware that Naruto would be able to control himself, he eventually does allow them to go on a C-rank mission to guide a bridge builder named Tazna. But before that would happen, let's do some character development with Hinata, Ino, and Naruto, because why the fuck not? So, Naruto would casually be walking through the village. He still has a week until his C-rank mission would start, and he doesn't have any missions right now. So he's walking around the village, and he's going to the old place, or the place where he used to go all the time, Ichiraku's ramen shop. So with him going there, he'd obviously get his, his classical ramen, and he'd be enjoying it to its maximum extent. He'd be enjoying this so much that he'd be chilling at this point. At this point, this is where Ino and Hinata would walk in, seeing their, teammate, with Hinata wanting to ask Naruto a few questions about what exactly he did, with Naruto being happy to answer her and giving her all of the details of his training and everything that he had actually had to do to figure out how to control that power that he used against Kakashi. Hinata would be pretty impressed by this. She's like, oh, I didn't realize I knew you were, like, strong-willed and, like, everything like that, but I didn't realize you, like, trained that hard. And Ino's looking at Naruto's body now. She's like, oh, that's why you got these muscles. You weren't just born like this. Nice. And Naruto's like, thanks? He doesn't exactly know how to react to this, but Hinata knows exactly what Ino meant by that. she's starting to like Naruto. And Hinata doesn't exactly want that to happen. So through a show of her confidence, and not really confidence, but through a show of her not wanting to be outdone by Ino, she runs up to Naruto, or she looks over at Naruto now. She's already, like, obviously really close to Naruto. And she puts her hand on Naruto's shoulder, and she looks at him in the eyes and says, "Naruto, I like you." And Naruto's like, "Wait, I literally got back like a week ago. How do you know you like me?" Hinata's like, "Well, I've liked you for a really long time, Naruto." And realizes what she's doing, and she's like, "Well, I like you too, Naruto. Maybe it's just because of your body, but I still like you." And Naruto's like, "Wait, both of you? Why? What did I do to get you guys to like me?" And they're just trying to they're trying to give Naruto a straight answer, but Hinata's would be a little bit more straightforward, or not anywhere near as straightforward as Ino's, who's just, "Well, I think you're hot." And Naruto's like, "Oh, okay, I'm fine with that. What about you, Hinata? Why do you like me?" And Hinata looks at Naruto, and she blushes a little bit, and then she gives him some. It's a kind of a weird explanation of how Naruto was basically like, kind of saved her, I guess you could say, as a kid, and she's basically liked him ever since then, and wanted to find a way to help Naruto, wanted to find a way to save him too. And Naruto's like, "Oh, well, that's kind of sweet." And Hinata's like, "So, who are you gonna pick?" And Naruto's just looking at them. He's like, "Why do I only gotta pick one?" And just, yeah, I already did it. Episode 2, and Naruto is acquiring a harem. Whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. So Hinata's like, "Oh, well, you make a point. Then neither of us would have to be sad." And, comes to the pretty similar conclusion, especially since she doesn't really like Naruto's for his personality, at least not yet. She just thought Naruto was a hunk, so she's like, "Okay, I don't really mind sharing." So, yeah, I'm going to leave this part off here. I'll see you guys in the next part. Peace out, bye.